Welcome, warriors. In this episode, I had the privilege of talking with Liz Birkeland, a certified covenant life coach and the co founder of Grace Uncovered. In this conversation, Liz Shank. Welcome, warriors. In this episode, I had the privilege of talking with Liz Birkeland, a certified covenant life coach and the co founder of Grace Uncovered. In this conversation, Liz shines a light on the hidden battles, both in the decision to have an abortion and the shame so many women feel afterward. Grab a tissue and join us as we talk about the trauma of deciding to have an abortion. Let's rock. Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. Today, I'm talking with Liz Birkeland about multiple traumatic incidences in her life, but more specifically about the battles many women face as they make the decision to have an abortion, and what many also experience after their abortions. Liz Birkeland has many passions and loves in her life, the most important of which is a follower of Christ. She and her husband, Peter, have been married for over 31 years and are parents to 2 adult sons. Liz is also a Gold Star daughter, as her father was killed in Vietnam. As a certified covenant life coach, speaker, and co-founder of Grace Uncovered, Liz draws upon her diverse life and work experiences to empower clients in achieving their dream lives. Her primary area of interest is in guiding women to overcome the silent struggles of abortion, enabling them to discover the healing, hope, and freedom that God has for them. Liz has a love of several other things: America, drinking coffee, both prairies and beaches, traveling to new and familiar places, wearing jeans, and the joy of reading books. We share some of those similarities, some of those interests. But before we get started, I have another wonderful review to share. This one is from Twice Retired. Heather's words make you think about how people can get hurt and how they handle and overcome their personal emotional battles. Thank you, Twice Retired. I really appreciate that review. I also have a new email list sign-up page. Thank you to Sophia. When you sign up for my emails, you will receive a list of red flags to look for in your relationships, things I wish I hadn't ignored. You can sign up for the weekly announcements of new Warrior Words episodes, new Beauty in the Broken videos, and other fun things. Go to subscribepage.io/pearls of wisdom. And I'll add that link to the show notes for you. Now, on to the show. All right. As you heard on the intro, it's my pleasure to have Liz Birkeland here with us today. And welcome to Warrior Words, Liz.
Oh my gosh, Heather, it is such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to talk to you. There's like so much cool stuff going on in your show and in what we're going to talk about today. So I'm super excited.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come talk to us today.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. Okay, so you are the co-founder of Grace Uncovered. But before you tell us exactly what that is, can you share with our listeners, the battle that you faced, the trauma basically that you experienced that kind of led to its creation?
Absolutely. So creating Grace Uncovered because of an unplanned pregnancy that I had when I was 24 and the abortion that I made the decision to have. But leading up, there was a lot that led into that. And I would say that my first exposure to trauma occurred when I was 5. My dad was an officer in the Army, the US Army, and was a pilot. And he was killed in a plane crash in Vietnam. And what we've learned about trauma through research and personal experience is that the part of our brain that deals with trauma doesn't really have a sense of time. And so when we talk about a traumatic experience, we can be immediately transported back to that place, back to that moment. And I really believe that my entire experience with trauma started then at age 5. And like I said, I went on to have an abortion, but I've also had additional traumatic experiences in my life. After my husband and I were married and the birth of our first son, he was born. We found out during the pregnancy that he was seriously ill. And within 24 hours of being born, he was in surgery and he spent 10 weeks in the hospital before we even brought him home. And so there was another traumatic experience. And then my husband has had, he's had cancer and he's had cardiac issues, dealing with financial issues with businesses. And, all of these things pile onto each other. And so it's really hard to say, oh, it was that experience. Like we've heard from your story, the experience with your husband and your experience with your health, they pile on each other. So to make a long story short, Grace Uncovered came about as a place for women to come so they can heal from abortion. But my traumatic experiences started before then. My journey as a warrior started before that and continued in different paths since then. So kind of makes a long story short, hopefully, or a short story long.
Yeah. Well, we could probably talk for hours on just a few of those things that you brought up.
Yep.
But I think that's what I'm learning, and they haven't all been released yet. But I've conducted a couple interviews before this one, and I think that it's just that more people are experiencing more and more traumas. It's not a one and done.
Mm-mm.
And I had somebody pray over me when I got cancer, and they said, "Okay, Lord, this woman has dealt with enough. Can it stop?" And while I certainly love that sentiment, I don't know that it really works that way.
No, I agree. My family and I are in a period of wandering. We're calling it the wilderness right now, and we're waiting. And it's like, haven't we had enough, Lord? And it's like, well, no, because that's kind of how it works with him is we're on this side of heaven in the natural world, and there is trauma and there's problems and there's good and there's joy, but it all goes together. And I think the other thing that you kind of alluded to here too, Heather, is the fact that we don't know what's going on in everybody else's life either. And maybe people are starting to talk about what they're going through more. I know one of your previous episodes was Jerry talking about addictions. And, until a handful of years ago, you never talked about this. It was like, oh no, that stays in the basement. That stays in the closet. That stays in the back room. And it's the same with abortion. There have been over 64 million abortions in the US, and yet nobody talks about it. Research has shown that 1 in 3 women by the age of 45 has had 1 or more abortions. And so that means like your neighbor and your auntie and the lady at church and the woman checking you out at the grocery store. We're all part of that group, and yet nobody talks about it. So some of it is bringing these secrets out into the
Yes.
light.
Yeah,
Mhm.
shining that light that on the darkness.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you can and talk about that a little bit more about the healing that comes after having an abortion. Because like you said, we don't talk about it. A lot of people don't know what happens afterwards and how women are feeling, or maybe how the men are feeling, or the other family
Mhm.
members, because it's
Mhm.
not just something that affects one person.
Correct. Correct. Um, for example, so with my dad dying when I was 5, my mom never remarried. So she was a single mom. And me having an abortion wasn't just me having the abortion, it was her losing a grandchild
Mhm.
too. Um, the father of the baby, I haven't been in touch with him, haven't seen him or talked to him since a couple of years after the abortion. And yet it's still his child that wasn't born. And so wondering, how is he faring? You know, does he ever think about this? How has it affected him? Um, yeah, this whole idea that I think as a society, there tends to be this idea that it's a pretty benign medical procedure. And when we call it a medical procedure, it's easier to not call it what it is, that it's a baby involved. There's a child's life that is snuffed out and shortened. Um, and people are responsible for that. So there's a lot of facets that go in this. And I'll tell you, so my abortion it'll be 39 years ago. And it was only a year and a half ago that I started talking about it. There were a couple of family members who knew about it, and the father of the baby knew about it. And after it happened, it was like, well, we aren't going to talk about that at all.
Mm.
And so the idea that I didn't deal with it for decades, and perhaps there are hundreds and thousands and perhaps millions of women in this country alone who aren't dealing with this. It's not like they're just trying to shove it under the rug, but um, paying attention to the idea that this has affected my life. And they may have things going on, like they may have depression, they may have anger issues, they might have physical repercussions from the procedure. Um, but if everything looks okay on the outside, it's a lot easier to just kind of continue on as if nothing happened until it keeps nagging at you. And it's like, no, there's something going on here. And once you can start peeling those layers back and start facing and bringing to the light what your decision and what you've been through, you honestly, I won't say you can't deal with it, but I find it really hard to believe that you can deal with it well and that you can truly move on.
And I like that you talked about, peeling the layers back, and and not necessarily looking at it as just a generic medical procedure, because when
Mhm.
you look at it that way, it is a little easier to hide it and put on that facade, as
Mhm.
as you're going out about your day and your life. So I think that when you do peel those layers back and you get to what's really going on, you're able to either treat yourself with compassion or allow someone else to help you to do that. And I think that's kind of the goal with Grace Uncovered,
Mhm.
is to do that for women.
Yeah. No, we want to be a safe place where women feel like they have some place where they can talk about this without feeling judged, without feeling like somebody's going to rub their nose in it. Helping to get some answers on how do I deal with these things? What is this that I'm really feeling? Because a lot of times the abortion is not just an isolated decision. It's oftentimes a decision that is based upon a series of other poor decisions, ill-informed, unknown. There's just a lot that goes into it. I heard somebody say that a woman doesn't choose an abortion like she chooses an ice cream cone flavor. She chooses it like an animal chooses to gnaw its limb off to get out of a trap.
Wow,
And to me, it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, no, this isn't, for most women, it is not a light decision. No. And yet, how do you go and talk to somebody who you can be afraid might judge you about this, who might not understand, who might totally disagree with you? Yeah.
And there's a lot of shame. And I think that that's something else I'm discovering as I'm talking to people with various types of traumas, all across the spectrum. I think there's this shame that is involved in so much. And, we've been told, stay quiet, don't talk about this, don't share this. And there is a lot of judgment out there. And I think that's a stigma that we need to remove it. We need to peel the onion layers away so that we don't have this stigma anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know that you're a Christian and I'm a Christian, and you don't have to be a Christian to understand where this idea of shame comes from. This is a fear of what people are going to say about us. These are lies that have been planted in our heads that people have more power over us than God does. Whether you believe in God or not, the idea that somebody else has more power over you by their judgment of you. So,
yeah,
these lies are powerful.
And they are. And I don't know why, I don't know enough about the human brain to know why we believe the lies more easily than we believe the truth. I don't understand why that it works that way, but it does seem to do that. We're much more convinced. And that's one of the reasons that I, in my description of the podcast, if anybody ever reads the narrative that I wrote there, I talk about going from someone like the character of Mrs. Banks to Joan of Arc, and taking that leap and getting rid of that shame and developing that courage that we have, that courage and strength that is God-given. I believe that is God-given, and using it and not believing the lies and not giving someone else our power. Because I think a lot of us do that. We give our power away.
No, I agree. Very much so. Yeah. Well, and you talking about giving our power away, I didn't necessarily want an abortion, but I didn't know what else might be an alternative as far as what I felt I could do. And I didn't ask for the help. I didn't ask for the support, And so that idea of giving power away, or even not hanging on to the power that we do have and using that. There's a lot that goes in to all of these decisions, and that idea of shame and, regret, feeling guilty, sorrow. Yeah, there's a lot.
And I think that's a good point too, because I think, you said 39, I believe 39 years ago. So 39 years ago, the resources available and the help available were much different than where they are today. And I think that's an important thing for our listeners to know, is that there is help, and that there are alternatives. If that's what you're considering, there are alternatives out there, and there are people who are willing to help. And so maybe I'll put some of those resources, in addition to Grace Uncovered, in the show notes, so that people know, people have places to go.
Right.
So I want to not necessarily switch, but I want to talk a little bit more about you and how, because you said you had these series of traumas, and that they piled up. And so is there like a turning point or a specific event that happened that made you feel more like a survivor or an overcomer, than just battling trauma after trauma?
Like I've shared, I've always considered myself a Christian, but I'd like to clarify that I've always believed in God, but I haven't always believed God. And that goes back a long time to when my parents must have told me, Daddy will be home from Vietnam, he'll be home. And then when he didn't come home, as a 5-year-old little girl, thinking, well, if I can't trust these two people who I can see and who I love, and I know they love me, how can I trust God, who I don't know, to come up with stuff? And so the turning point was me always looking for something that was going to fill these holes, something that I could really trust in. And my husband and I have been married over 31 years, and he's like the quietest, strongest, gentle giant. And I would go and get a new part-time job, or I'd rearrange the pillows in the living room, or I would clean out the pantry and, put some cute little bamboo shelves in there and make everything look cool. And he'd come home, he'd be like, oh, you'll enjoy that job, but I think you're looking for Jesus. Oh, the living room looks nice, Liz, but I think you're looking for Jesus. And it was honestly only a few years ago, Heather, that I was like, you're right. I am looking for something to fill this void, and this idea that I'm not enough on my own, this idea that I can't trust what other people say. And so the turning point, even after going through all of these things, has been the idea that not only do I believe in God, but I believe him. And for me personally, knowing that he is who he says he is, and he does what he says he'll do, and he'll do it for me. He said he'll do it for you. He'll do it for your guest on the previous episode. He'll do it for our neighbors, right next door to each of us. He will do it for the person on the other side of the earth, and he'll do it for me. And so that idea of believing him is honestly my turning point, in that idea of, once I started believing him, then I could start letting go of the shame that I felt. I could start forgiving people for whatever I thought they had let me down, and I could ask for forgiveness. The turning point was feeling like I could bring anything to him, that it wasn't just up to me. I've always been a doer, and if I worked hard enough, I'd get whatever I was working for or desiring. And then things would be disappointing. And it's like, well, I must not be enough. And that's not true. Yeah. So
Oh, that's
I
beautiful.
will say that's the turning point.
That's beautiful. No, that's perfect. So we also talk about thriving. And I think here is a good place for you to describe what Grace Uncovered actually is, because that is a great way to thrive after all of this. So can you describe it for us?
It is just an organization. My business partner and I are both, we've both had experience with abortions in our past. We are both certified covenant life coaches. So we're trained in coaching, but also feeling called to be a place where we can talk about what we've been through. and to help other women feel like there is some hope. You've already made this decision. You aren't doing well with dealing with it. And there is a place to come and talk about it and get some hope, find some freedom from these lies that we tend to carry around. Feel like there's a renewed sense of purpose in moving forward with your life. I know she started off with coaching me through my abortion experience because, like I said, I hadn't talked to anybody about it and hadn't dealt with it. And as she's coaching me through this, and I'm feeling so much healing coming, God said to me, you need to do this. You need to talk about this. And I said, no, don't make me do this.
Yes.
Because it was terribly scary to tell somebody else a secret that I had carried around for decades. And yet that idea of that's the purpose is to help start getting this secret out so that it's not creating, it's almost like envision, this can be a little nasty, but I know that you've dealt with some infections in some of your health issues. An infection festers, and until you can get it cleaned out, it just kind of sits there and it's always kind of bubbling under the surface. The skin may heal over it, but if there's an infection underneath, and it's kind of like how we are with carrying these secrets, whether it's addiction or abortion or I'm trying to think what else people like totally drawing a blank here. Just dealing with these bad situations that are part of life, and just we have to talk about them and get healing and freedom from them. So, and find a sense of hope that there is a purpose beyond just going through this terrible situation, whatever it is.
Okay, so we're going to put the website to Grace Uncovered in the show notes for anybody who would like to get to know you and to learn more about what you do. But you also have a free gift for them that goes along with what you just talked about. Can you share what that is with them?
Yes, our organization is in the beginning stages, and so what we've got to offer, our website, it goes to a landing page. You are signing up for our email, but what we want to offer you as a gift is a 3-video series that gets you started on learning more about Grace Uncovered and gets you started on learning more about how you can find that hope and that healing. We're starting a podcast. We don't have a launch date for it yet. If you get on that mailing list, we'll keep you informed on when that comes. But the thing I would like to say is Grace Uncovered isn't just for the woman who is looking for healing from an abortion. This is for any of us because we don't know who might need this. You might not know that the person you spend the most time with had an abortion 30 years ago or 3 years ago. And if you are hooked into Grace Uncovered and have this as a resource, we're asking people to not only sign up and look into this for themselves, but for somebody that they may not know, that it can be a resource to share with others. And even if you don't have anybody in mind, if you can say, I just listened to a video series from these gals helping women heal from abortion, and I wanted to share this in case somebody needs this. So that's what we're asking for.
That is wonderful, because I think a lot of people would look at it and they would say, oh, well, I didn't have one.
That's not me.
And it's, and it's for everyone. It's for everyone. So, okay. All right. Are there, and you just kind of summed everything up kind of beautifully, but is there anything else that you would like to say? Any other warrior words that you would have to offer our listeners?
I would just encourage people that Like I said, it's only been a short time ago that I've started sharing my story publicly. And there's still that little bit of fear of what's my friend going to say when I tell them. And the idea that a lot of those fears are ones that we place on ourselves. And so I really want to encourage people, and not to say that you're going to be lackadaisical or, carefree in who you share your story with. You want somebody that you know is going to be supportive and encouraging, but don't get stuck behind that fear that it might not have the result that you want, because most likely it's going to be fine. And by coming to someone like Heather, someone like me at Grace Uncovered, these are judgment-free places. And I encourage you to continue to reach out and find that place that is safe for you.
And excellent closing words. So thank you, Liz. I appreciate you joining us today and sharing Grace Uncovered with us, and sharing, more importantly, your story. That we need to share more stories and shine more light, so that we can all survive and thrive.
Mm-hmm. No, honestly, this has been such a joy to be able to share my story with you and your listeners. And it's honestly such an opportunity that we can just show each other how best to have some compassion. Yes. And what you're doing is so encouraging for the rest of us. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, and with that, we will say goodbye for this week, and we'll see you next week on Warrior Words. Thank you for listening to the Warrior Words podcast today. Abortion is a word that sparks a variety of emotions. No matter what your beliefs are on this topic, I think we can all agree that its impact is far-reaching. This decision affects many people in different ways. As Liz said, the decision to have an abortion is not light or an easy one for most women. I don't want to get into politics on this podcast, but I want to say that the media portrays both sides of this hotbed issue by highlighting the extremes. What they miss, or purposefully avoid, is the human aspect. There are repercussions from this decision. They can be physical side effects, emotional trauma, shame, and guilt. Those last three can come from within, or they can come from the outside, sometimes both. And they can make the women experiencing them less likely to seek help. They don't need judgment. They need compassion, love, and support. To that end, let's start healing. Please take advantage of the video series Liz offers on her website. Like she said earlier, you don't need to be the one who needs healing. The series can help you with that compassion and understanding and uncovering grace. So whether you personally need that healing or you want to be more compassionate for those who do, please go to graceuncovered.net and watch these powerful videos. That link will be in the show notes. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless. Psst. Are you still listening? Good. I have a favor to ask. If you are enjoying these episodes, could you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show? Your star ratings and comments help Apple help other people find me, and that would be so helpful for me and the Warrior Words podcast. I love reading your reviews on upcoming episodes. Thank you, warriors.